you can tell yourself you're worthy all day long and still not feel it. What ends up moving the needle a lot of the times and feeling more worthy is anger thrives on repetition. We need to feel the anger. We should be angry, but we need a break from it. So how can we break out of the repetition of fixating on it for our own sanity and health? Things can absolutely change on a dramatic level. The majority of the world's private wealth is projected in like 25 years to be in the hands of.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. Today's guest is, I brought you the best in the field, you guys. This is Maggie Winzeler, and she is the founder of Every Woman is Worthy. Every Woman is Worthy is a social impact brand dedicated to celebrating women and advancing gender equality. Did I tell you that I brought you the best or what? She is the woman in this space with the messaging that you guys want to hear. And she has worked to empower women and girls through sports and increase participation in fitness and wellness. And now she is leading Every Woman is Worthy and elevating women's voices, championing women's rights, and creating tangible impact in women's lives around the world. Maggie, you are doing it, girl.
In the arena, you know?
Thank you so much for being here today. Our audience is absolutely your audience. And I cannot wait to amplify your message because your brand is so important. And what you're doing in this space needs to be heard by everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I agree. Not to be self-centered and egotistical. The world needs the message, and we have the data and the lived experiences to back that up. It transcends so many layers, from how we relate to ourselves to the systems that should honor us better as women, and confronting gender discrimination and unequal rights that still persist across the entire globe. This isn't just about one region. It's really about the larger story of what we are living through as women. And in particular, just to kind of give the audience a little context, since 2019, about 40% of countries worldwide have regressed in women's safety and equality. So we are actually in a really catastrophic, not to sound too doom and gloom, but we are in a catastrophic moment for women's safety and equality since the pandemic. The pandemic was really the beginning of that shift, with creating unstable economies, changes in political order, a lot of conflict zones beginning to break out. Just the whole world order shifted. And since then, we've seen the rise of autocratic rule across the world. There's a global rise of authoritarianism that directly impacts democracies, and democracy is very intertwined with women's rights. And we see a lot of conflict zones and global, since 2025, global defunding of women's rights organizations and humanitarian relief worldwide. Defunding by the US first, and then many donor governments followed, and they are shifting those funds to military budgets instead of towards women's safety. So we're definitely in a hard moment in the world, but what encourages me is seeing that the majority of people actually do want, better equality, more safe communities, more access to the right kinds of care. And so I really feel so encouraged every single day by the people I get to connect with worldwide, because we really are in this together. Like, the global majority is in it together and feels the same tension and is inclined to bend justice in a certain way together. And that is incredibly encouraging to me. So we're going to come out of this. I believe that strongly. It's just going to take a lot of work and a lot of collective buy-in, a lot of social responsibility that people may not want to take, but we all kind of have to recognize our part right now.
Oh man, I'm feeling very so I know there's two ways to take that, but I'm feeling very hopeful and inspired about the small role that I can play, and
Yes.
the all of our listeners and the role they can play, because we are really up against it right now.
Yeah.
Really up against it. And I I have no stats to back this up. I have nothing but anecdotal
Yeah.
information. But to me, when women and children are thriving in society, everyone is thriving.
Mhm.
And to hear that women are less safe than they've been in the last 40 years,
Mhm.
just that makes me afraid for everyone, not just women, because a society in which women are not safe is just not one I want to live in. And
Yeah.
not just because I'm me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, so to give you some stats, so we know that when women are involved in political leadership, when they are included in governance, we see on a statistical level that peace agreements hold better. We see things like
Shocker.
yeah, right? We see things like economies improve typically. We see we see maternal mortality and childhood poverty and hunger go down, right? So we see some really important benchmarks. And we also know that women are really invested in being tied to climate change and sustainability. So we see all of these things change and improve actually when women have a seat at the table. So one of the most important things we can do is to, as women in particular, is to destigmatize women stepping out in leadership. So much of the time there's a bit of a internalized misogyny with women ourselves, if we're being honest, where we see a woman stepping out, being courageous, using her voice, going after, so-called higher positions in society, be that in business or political representation, and we put a mark on their back because it's intimidating. And there's this scarcity mindset of, oh gosh, if she gets XYZ, there's not enough to go around. That scarcity mindset is baked into a lot of women because of patriarchal systems that make us think that we are less, right? So if we can address the internalized misogyny around women in leadership as women ourselves and be more courageous in pursuing leadership across all different spheres of society, right? And careers to governance everywhere, then we can actually see things shift quite dramatically because women in political leadership, I just explained all of the benefits for communities, right? And in addition to that, one of the key factors or one of the key defining benchmarks, I should say, around gender equality is equal rights under the law. And that's not projected on a global level to happen for almost 300 years. So, one of the things we can do to speed that way up is by actually having women have a seat at the table to shape these laws and make it so that we finally address the issues that are ongoing across the world that just really in 2026 we should not still be debating child marriage. We should not still be debating female genital mutilation, right? We should not still be having the prolific levels of gender-based violence with incredibly poor systems in a legal sense to address uh, the perpetrators, right? We shouldn't be having these issues. We know the solutions. It's the friction and the holdup by, and I'm not saying all men, but like by some men who have traditionally held power, who don't want to see things change, don't want to disrupt, the status quo. Women, however, will get in there and get the job done on the whole. Not every woman, but but women have these as higher priorities to take care of finally.
That's really, really interesting when you point to internal misogyny and how it relates to a scarcity mindset.
Mhm.
It's so interesting to me how I've always kind of defined the patriarchy because of now, I don't know if these are ingrained, from hunter gatherer days,
Mhm.
but the idea of men and the idea of competition and dominance
Mhm.
and scarcity being like, there's never enough, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think that those kind of characteristics, tendencies, I don't know, I don't want to generalize, but those kind of characteristics and then put into leadership roles, especially into a patriarchy, makes everyone feel as if there's not to go enough to go around.
Yeah.
And that's a very um That's a rough place to live.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I started my career in fitness and wellness, sports, and that was really something that struck me because I was working in Washington, D.C., and I was working with people from all over the world. And it was fascinating to me and tragic all at the same time how women from vastly different cultures were struggling with the same body image issues because of, I think, westernized ideal beauty ideals. And again, this pervasive feeling of not enoughness across culture, across race and ethnicity, across body size, and across age. And I saw that so clearly in the clients that I worked with in those early years of my career. And so it sat with me for a long time that the approach to helping women in fitness and wellness in particular was not just teaching them how to care for their body holistically and how to enjoy exercise and do it safely, but how to affirm them in the moment before they'd achieved their goal. And once they had achieved their goal, like helping them gently understand that they don't have to sustain the end, right? The end goal. What happens when they gain a few pounds back? How do we talk to ourselves in that moment instead of self-sabotaging? How do we recognize when maybe, for example, a body goal of weight loss or running a marathon, when we realize that maybe that's not the happiest place, but our expectations haven't adjusted yet. So we're putting all this undue pressure on ourselves to sustain something that actually doesn't make us happy. So it's really important that we understand self-worth, and when we're talking about being worthy as women, it is an internal battle a lot of the times. However, that internal battle really is impressed upon by the culture around us, by the systems around us, by gendered narratives, and so many things about the world. And I personally find that there's a bit of an exchange where you can tell yourself you're worthy all day long and still not feel it, right? What ends up usually, I believe, even in studies, psychology studies, what ends up moving the needle a lot of the times and feeling more worthy is taking an action, is taking a step, is doing something that actually honors that worth, and then growing in confidence in it and really strengthening it like a muscle.
That I love the, comparison to, using your worth as something that you need to strengthen. And I wanna ask you specifically, because you say, worth is a birthright. It's not something that you earn, and that's a really hard concept
Yeah.
for a lot of people, not just women, but especially women. And I want to know for you personally, when did you really start believing that for yourself? Have
Mm,
you always believed that? Did you have to talk yourself into it? And how did you do it?
such a good question. For me, as a child, I was always really engaged in sports, and I think that did help my confidence to a degree. For me, I've always been a very spiritual person, so I think that that is a component of it. And the moment though that I really think I stepped out in my courage around believing that inherent worth was actually born from the lowest moment in my life. So it was in the pandemic. I had a complicated pregnancy and then a late pregnancy loss. And without getting into too many of the details, I ended up with a life-threatening emergency and a hemorrhage. And they had to do an emergency surgery to save my life. And as I was dealing with the grief of losing my child and the loneliness of the pandemic and the darkness kind of closing in around me in that time period, it was really sitting in that pain and brokenness and feeling so unworthy. It was from that moment having to rebuild myself and come through the grief journey, which is never really done, by the way, of course. But it was really coming through that I started to really identify the inherent worth that never left me in that time. And part of that was spiritual, and part of that was also um, when I woke up from the surgery, I actually had a little bit of like an epiphany of sorts. It was very uh, similar to what I've later learned is what people say they experience after a near death experience. And I didn't have a moment where I was like floating above a room or anything. I don't remember it, but I just woke up with a really profound feeling of connection and a really profound sense of time sort of like collapsing in on itself, and this universal love and universal connection between all people, and not being abandoned by that. And no matter what had happened, if I had lived, if I had died, not being afraid because I knew I was held in that love. And that is really the principle that I have moved forward with in Every Woman is Worthy, because I don't see it as something that applies to one person or another. It's a universal truth. And I think that that truth really set in with me in that moment and then that unique span of time. And it later came full circle when I saw all of these women's rights falling worldwide. I saw all of the tragedies happening and started to look out at the world more after I had been recovering, started paying attention more to what was happening in the world with women's rights and equality. And I remember I was in my bathroom and I had this like really ragey moment, right? Where I just kind of like threw my hands up and was like, what am I supposed to do? I can't just sit here. Like I'm seeing all of this. I need to do something. What can I do? And that was the moment, like after releasing my rage quietly, or not quietly, but like loudly in my bathroom alone, right? In solitude, that was the moment it came kind of from the outside and from within at the same moment, kind of both. It was I heard every woman is worthy in that moment. And it made sense and it brought me peace in that moment. And I didn't know what it would mean. I didn't know how to follow through with that, but I knew it was just a calling that I needed to follow, and that I would I would see where it took me. And it's taken me in just less than 3 years to, a growing platform that's exploding, every day, in the best way possible, with people from diverse circumstances coming together, and I am just so amazed. I'm so amazed by the universality of it and by the diversity of the women and some men that come to the platform to engage and to learn about each other and to support one another. I learn every single day doing what I do, and so it's really awesome to be able to share that and create more of a global sisterhood where we can get used to celebrating one another and listening compassionately and honoring each other's worth, and recognizing the agency that we have to pull ourselves as women, as half of the population, to pull ourselves out of these broken systems and help recreate a healthier version of the world, much faster than any of us think that we can. It's not going to be at the same rate in every single country, but it can happen. It can happen. And there are positive benchmarks of change that have happened as well. I mean, I know that 40% number I gave in the beginning about, regressing and safety and equality is very grim, but we also have to understand that it's not always proportionate from one region to the next. We have to see the influences of where it's coming from and understand that those can be present in every single country. But obviously, not everybody is dealing with inequality at the same level, right? We've got to think about things from an intersectional lens.
First of all, thank you for sharing an unbelievably traumatic event. I think it's really interesting that it intersected with fertility
Yeah.
because uh, there are many women listening that have suffered from a pregnancy loss. In particular, there are, women who have suffered a late pregnancy loss that are hearing your words and are just resonating with them. It's really also interesting to see that moment come together for you at a moment where so much of our worth as women is tied to our ability to
Mhm.
further the human race,
Yep. Yep.
to be a mother to a child. And it I will just say, personally, it is a really, really dark moment for self-worth
Yeah.
if you aren't able to do that for any reason,
Yeah.
and you feel the failure of the weight of your worth all crashing down. And I think that it's really, really important that all women have a baseline to come back to. And it's just so inspiring to hear that you could do that after trauma. And it feels like, if women have suffered a level of trauma, not if, most women have suffered
Yeah.
some level of trauma on their self-worth. And to hear that you've come to the other side of that is like everything.
Something that really helped me, and I don't know if it'll help somebody else, but everybody, faith or not aside, there was an interfaith funeral for my baby because I did a communal burial with him. And so, I was standing, even though it was social distance because of the pandemic, I was standing alongside countless other women who had gone through all different types of loss as well. And we were standing there, having to be social distance instead of talking and connecting because of the pandemic. But we were all there graveside together, grieving collectively. And it was actually so beautiful to have that because it just really showed how universal loss is and that we grieve loss because of love, right? And we're not alone in that. So many women go through loss or hardship at different points in time or struggles with fertility. And we're truly not alone in that. It is a very common experience. And what the woman giving the interfaith little, sermon of sorts said at the graveside for all of these different people is she reminded us that obviously there's nothing we could do about our loss. It had happened. There was nothing we could have done. We couldn't carry that blame forward. But what we could do is we could decide how to let it move us into the future. Like that was a moment of reflection and agency of, yes, this happened and it's tragic, and sit with your grief as long as you need, but when you decide to take that next step, take it intentionally. Take it take it in honor of your baby. Take it with love, figure out what this means to you and how you want it to change how you live your life because it can coming out of the depths of loss. I don't think there's anything more capable of changing the lens through which we see the world and what we see that matters and doesn't matter, the things that we then prioritize and give more time and energy and breathing space for. So that for me was I sat with those words and I wanted them to mean something. And then eventually they did.
Well, if that isn't just the most inspiring thing.
So, you already know we make the best workout gear, but one of our best products, our highest rated product on our website, is actually our collagen. If you have not heard about Glow Up by CVG, you are missing out. There is almost 700 5-star reviews on this product because it is such an amazing supplement. Actually, looking at it today, there are only 2 1-stars that were meant to be 5 stars. They love the product, they hit the wrong amount of stars. This is one of our most popular products for a reason. It dissolves like no other collagen. It's type 1 and 3. You're gonna have healthier skin, better joint mobility. Everything about this collagen makes it easy to put into your daily routine. So if you haven't tried Glow Up, get on cvg.com and make sure to add it to cart today. It's our best product.
In your opinion, when do women first get the messaging that they are, quote unquote, maybe not enough?
I think it happens really young. Yeah, I think it
Yikes.
happens really, really young. I've heard girls as young as, 5, 6 years old struggling with body image. I think it usually starts about body image or about unequal access compared to
Yes.
boys. And Yeah, I think that a big turning point from my understanding is between 4th grade and 6th grade. I think around 4th grade, more girls start to become self-conscious about their body. And in 5th grade, girls are outperforming boys in math. But then I think by 6th to 7th grade, somewhere in the middle of middle school, it shifts. And they've shown that it's not about girls' intelligence, it's about the fear and stigma of asking the questions when they need more help, and that the boys maybe they're struggling a little bit more or the same amount as the girls, but they are more assertive about getting the help and support that they need in the classroom to find the right answers. So the confidence to advocate for yourself, the confidence to know that your voice has equal weight and deserves equal attention. I think all of those things come into play and slowly chip away at girls' self esteem. And then, of course, I think it's incredibly important that we recognize more traumatic factors that happen, right? With child abuse, with sexual exploitation of girls almost all the time. Well, like, for example, it's rare that it's not as common that a girl is just kidnapped up off the street. It does happen, but most of the time, children are exploited by somebody in their own home. Most of the time, they're exploited by someone they know. And right now, with the rise of artificial intelligence, we know that 1 in 8 children already in the United States has been a victim of AI deepfakes, pornographic deepfakes, which is horrifying, absolutely horrifying. As a mother of a 4-year-old daughter, like, I I lose sleep over this. It's something we have to address extremely quickly. It's terrifying. And even when we do have the laws in place, which we don't in the United States, and nobody's trying few people in power right now are trying to remedy that. Even when we do have the laws in place, it's still going to be a huge risk. Um, Still going to be a huge risk for girls. So those are all factors, and of course, racism comes into play as well, and and so many other aspects of marginalized identities and different lived experiences. We could talk about a lot of layers of this and advertising that's happening and the messaging that's happening right now, paid advertising using throwbacks to racist content, and it's so important that people don't brush that aside. So do I think that racism can impact girls growing up? Yeah, absolutely. Black women tell me all the time, indigenous women, the ways that even young girls from Asian countries get sexualized even at young ages. I mean, there's so many layers, and it's important as women that we don't create a monolith, right? That we don't create a monolith of thinking that everybody's experience is the same, because everybody has a layered experience and diverse experiences. And yeah, we just need to be compassionate about that.
It's making the space for that is just so important, and it just goes along with, believing women,
Yeah.
believing their experience and making space for it and opening up the fact that it's not your experience and that's okay, and also beautiful and, horrific at the same time. I
Mhm.
I wanna get into body image and where that play because we see when we're laying the groundwork of young girls, we see that as kind of the first sign.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I just am living right now in like a mixture of sorrow and rage, and I just
Mhm. Yeah.
do you have any advice for how do we have this information?
Mhm.
How do we spread this information? But how do we not get stuck in a place of sorrow and rage? Because that for me, I know that's not good for me, my mental health, but
Mhm.
like it feels also like, well, you can't ignore this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of wrestling with that right now, in particular for white women in America who haven't really felt such direct threats before, but are feeling the pain of that right now. And I think, again, before addressing your question, I think it's just so important that people sit with that and recognize that that pain is pain and grief and rage that many marginalized women have experienced for so much longer, right? And so if we can use that, I'm white as well. And so if we as white women can use that to shape the way we move about the world, to listen to marginalized voices, to center marginalized identities in our solutions, to not tokenize people, but to just recognize the humanness of each other and the need for sisterhood and the need to come together and to create this healing around sisterhood bonds that sometimes get broken, especially with distrust across races sometimes. And so that healing is not always going to be perfect. I think that people are going to make mistakes on it. So it's just important to be humble and to pursue it anyway. Pursue it anyway, even when it's uncomfortable, because sometimes breaking out of especially for white women, like the good girl narrative and the nice girl complex is going to necessitate discomfort. And so I think when you're using your voice in a way that makes you uncomfortable, it's actually a really good sign that you're making progress. And that's not something everybody is going to be willing to take on, but I think that those who do are the ones really participating in the healing and in the change that's necessary, right? And creating space for the bond to be better between women. So that's something for people to think about. And then in terms of the sorrow and rage, like I see this so much. There's so much frustration and rage, but what what I also think is so powerful about that is that that alone is the healing. And I know that's not the answer that everybody wants, and of course I'll give some more, but that alone is the healing because women are paying attention. We are watching what's happening not just in our own countries, but seeing what's happening overseas to women in places like, for example, Afghanistan, the women in Iran right now, women in Palestine. Like we're seeing trauma vicariously if we're watching it from a distance and we're caring. We want we want better solutions for people. So the caring and the grief is part of that healing because in these incremental ways it steers us to do things a little differently. It
Yes.
steers us not just to like doom scroll, which of course can be unhealthy sometimes, right? But to move about the world with a different inclination, a different worldview. And that's step one is gaining the bigger worldview and seeing the world not from a Western only lens, speaking to us Americans, but seeing it from a global perspective. Again, not painting people as a monolith, but really being able to listen and learn and expand our understanding about what women's rights mean, what is true feminism, so to speak, rather than a Western narrow version of it, or a perception of it, I should say. So these are really important things. Like the grief and the rage is so important. I think it's not about turning it off. We can't help that. It's a
Right.
good thing. It
Mhm.
comes from a righteous place, right? But simple things that ground us in the moment, right, are going to be necessary. And I am saying this to myself right now. Okay. Because I am not perfect at this. I need some help sometimes. But the simple things like shutting down media, not disconnecting from it, not canceling your social media account, not never looking at the headlines, right? That's numbing out. That's not the same thing. But saying, okay, I need to regulate my nervous system. I'm feeling panicky. I've listened, I've learned, I'm doom scrolling at the point now and just hyping myself up. I'm gonna, I'm gonna pause, not turn it off entirely, right? I'm gonna pause, I'm gonna set it to the side. I am going to go do something to remind myself of the present circumstances that I'm in. Go play with your kids. Kids will ground you real quick, usually with screaming, but like they will bring you back to the present because of their physical, tangible needs and getting, focused with them sometimes can bring me back to reality, to not to reality, but to like circumstances of my home, right?
Mm.
Do something with your hands, like, cooking or a hobby that you have, like move it out. If you like to exercise, which I assume a lot of people listening to this do, and I do as well, like run it out.
Yes.
Go to boxing class, or if you need to like do something more gentle because you're feeling really griefy, like go to the gentle yoga and just like let it flow. I think it gets stored. Trauma and the stress and anxiety stays in our bodies. It stays in our bodies and it does have to move out.
Yeah.
It can move out in a lot of different ways. And that's going to look individual to every single person, just like every single person loves different formats of exercise and movement. And that's fine. Find the thing that does it for you. If that's playing a game of tennis with a friend, if that's taking a walk with a coffee in hand with your dog, if that's, going to a cycle class, whatever it is, like do that for you and let it move through and out. If anybody ever wants to try Reiki, I feel like that's a really powerful
Mm.
release sometimes of like stored energy and like letting things come through. So that's something people can try. Um, but that and then laughter, find things that make you laugh. Laughter is so healing and important. Laughter and getting together with your girlfriends. Um, if you have girlfriends you can get together with, we know that there are tons of health benefits to gathering with women. And like we see that from studies that like the more women that are gathering and the more often, the better the benefits, which is just hysterical. It's like the bigger your pack and you're getting together with them, it's like it's just gonna be the wind under your wings. So get together with your ladies, make time for friendship, make time for romance. I have, my husband and I've been married 12 years. I need to be better about that. We we say all the time, we're like ships passing in the night now that we've got 3 kids and we're both
Yeah.
so busy with career stuff and like that physical touch and healing
Yeah.
of knowing that somebody else is there and with you.
Yeah.
So important. And then one quick exercise that I've found that really helps me, and I hope I can remember it the right way. Of course, psychologists would be able to tell you right away. It's like the 5 senses. And
Yes.
yeah, it's so
Hmm.
like think of, and I forget what the order is exactly. I just kind of make it up each time. It's like listen for 5 different sounds. Like pause, slow down, and listen with your ears and see if in your current space you can hear 5 different types of sounds. And then it was like, can you touch 4 different textures and like rubbing your hand over the textures and finding that and focusing your mind on what it feels like. And what's like 3 different smells you can smell. What are 2 things you could see? And then what would be the 5th one? Taste?
Mm.
I don't know if taste was in there. Anyways, something. Go look up the 5 senses exercise. I forget all of the details, but it really does. It for me, that is more effective to me than box breathing. I'll be honest, because the box breathing, I'm like my mind's still wandering and racing sometimes.
Mm.
And like for me, I have to get my mind distracted first before that and like get it focused and out of the hamster wheel so that then I can do the actual slower breathing. So if I can get my mind on something else and out of the repetitive pattern, then that can be really helpful. And one line that I saw just this week that really helped me is that anger thrives on repetition. And I thought that was really helpful. And again, like we need to feel the anger. We should be angry, but sometimes we need a break from the anger. It can still stew underneath. It's cool. It's fine. Like let the furnace stay hot. But we need a break from it. So how can we break out of the repetition of fixating on it for our own sanity and health?
It's so important. And it really does feel good to hear that activism can exist on and at the same time as, solid mental health, because
Mhm.
sometimes it feels like one or the other. But I feel really hopeful about the fact that, these you can know these things, but you can also control your algorithm when you need to. You can
Yeah.
also take a break and just do your mindfulness exercises. You can step away without abandoning the cause altogether. And I think that that's a really hopeful thing for a lot of women to hear, because sometimes we get stuck in the one or the other and it feels too hard to stay
Mhm.
in one for too long.
Yeah, and actually that's the exact approach that we take with the advocacy content on our social media, for example. It's if you look at it, you'll see it's incredibly varied. There's celebratory pieces, and then there's pieces that sit with really hard topics.
Yeah.
And it's extremely layered and intersectional, and that's on purpose because, again, I keep coming back to this word, but it's true. Like women aren't all the same. We aren't monoliths, and our emotions are varied. And we do have to face down hard realities that women are living through right now around the world. But we also need to remember our agency and our power and celebrate that. And we can
Yeah.
do both at the same time and in the same space. It doesn't have to be an either or, right? Like
I
we
love that.
can and should do both. Like life would be monotone and flat and with less
Right.
meaning if we only did one over the other. Both are necessary.
You're so, so right about that. Um, Okay, I want to get into body image for a second because it is such a major player when it
Yeah.
comes to women feeling worth, tying worth to something tangible. And as we said, with young girls, one of the first markers that of inequality or that feeling of loss in worth is body positivity enough for to fight this battle, or do we need something deeper? What do we need? What should we be saying?
Mm. That's a great question. And I don't know that I have the perfect answer. I think body positivity is incredibly important, right? And being how we talk to ourselves, how we model that for our daughters too, as women, I think is extremely important. Somehow I have very healthy body image, but my mom, love her to pieces, but she would berate her body all the time growing up in front of me. And I'm a very deep empath, so for me, I was always like, "Why? Why are you talking that way?" In my head,
Yeah.
and so I didn't absorb it somehow, and it was she never targeted it at me, so I think that, you know, helped as well, but still, um, I I have things that I don't love about my body, but I'm going to talk about my body honestly with my daughter and stay positive and frame things in a healthy way to try to be a good role model for her in that area. So yeah, I've gone through my own stuff around body image as well, but I just don't place my worth in it. I just don't. I don't place all of my worth in it. I don't obsess over it. I don't spend very long getting together. I mean, like I said, I have like wet hair right now with my bun. I spend maybe like 10 minutes a day. You know, I just don't obsess over it. I just think that there is too much to do in life. There's too
Ugh,
much going on. Take care of yourself and exercise, intuitive, mindful eating, be around your people and community, and then the body image stuff sometimes, not for everybody, becomes less of the focus. But for young girls, gosh, I think it's so many factors around their body image and how we shape it. The body positivity is one piece, but like I said, it's not enough.
yeah.
We've got to be aware of what we're exposing them to is probably like a really big factor right now in the world, especially with all the digital media. And like, for example, and this, I hope nobody takes offense of this if they have daughters with Barbies, but like all the research has been there about
Yeah.
Barbies shaping little girls' body image and as young as, preschool through first grade, shaping how they view their own bodies and how they view other people's bodies. And so my daughter, of course, saw at Target, however many months ago, she saw a Barbie dream house. I told her that if she wanted something like that, that she wasn't allowed to have Barbies yet, but she could have Barbie's little sisters. And they can still play in her dream house. She can still do the outfits and the shoes and all the little tiny accessories and fun things. That might not be the perfect example, but I think it's simple things and keeping it in the back of our mind as care providers that girls' body image is shaped by 1,000 small things, not just one big
Yes.
thing. And can
Yes.
we just be mindful about what those small things are? Maybe it's delaying Barbies for a few years. Maybe not. I don't know. That's my choice. But maybe it's complimenting girls about their intelligence and how funny they are and things like that instead of constantly saying, "You look so cute, you look so pretty." I hardly ever, honestly, especially coming from the fitness space in my early career, I hardly ever, this is going to sound bad, but like I hardly ever compliment my daughter's looks because so many people emphasize it all the time that I'm like, she's got to hear something else. Yes, she is objectively adorable. She's so cute. But people just want to say it. Like
It's
the
the
first thing
least
they say about
interesting
her.
thing about her.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yes, she is a beautiful little girl, but that's not the thing that should stand out. Like
Yeah.
she is a ray of sunshine. And she's got this quirky humor, she's ridiculous trying to keep up with two older brothers. So she's spunky. It's those things. Those are the true her. Those are the true her. Yes, she has big, gigantic brown doe eyes. If we overemphasize those things for girls, that's what they overemphasize for themselves.
Right. Right.
They're gonna place
Right.
their worth where we're emphasizing it is. So when the world is constantly commenting on her looks, she hears it enough. She's
Yeah.
gotta hear something else from me.
I love that. I think that the death by a thousand paper cuts is what I always am thinking about when I'm thinking about someone's self-confidence, and this goes for girls and boys.
Yeah.
But especially when we're talking about body image with girls, it's just that everyday chatter that's in the background.
Mhm.
What are we saying to other women? What are we saying about ourselves? And they hear everything. And it's
Well,
those
and what does it
small
say
interactions.
and what does it say to the girl who's standing right beside my daughter when a caretaker when I'm picking her up from, a gym childcare or church childcare where she's been for an hour or something like that, and I'm picking her up and that person's commenting about my daughter's looks, and there's another little girl standing right there. What message does that send to her,
That there's a
right?
hierarchy. That's what
Correct.
you're right.
Correct.
Mhm.
So it's not just about who gets the attention, who doesn't get the attention. That says everything as well.
We're going to take a quick break to get you a whole bunch of friends.
Do you like Friends?
We have about 80,000 amazing women friends, more than that, in one space that can't wait to cheer you on in your fitness journey.
Whether it's lifting you up, getting you motivated to get to the gym, complimenting your outfit, we have gathered 80,000 of the best women on the planet and put them all in one place for your friendship pleasure.
Honestly, I would just pull out some of the amazing quotes from the group because you would think groups like this, you're like, I don't know. And I'm telling you, once you enter in the door, the virtual door, because you can do this anywhere, that you will find the most supportive community you have ever known. And it's called Stronger Together by CVG. You can find us on a Facebook group. It's a closed group, women only, and you got to get in there.
Get in there. It's so inspiring. Join us today. It's a perfect segue into comparison.
Mhm.
And I don't have any stats on this, and I cannot back this up in any way, but it feels to me that women struggle with an addictiveness to comparison.
Mm.
And so often it's other women, but even it can be larger than that. It can just comparison in general is something that I feel like women have a tendency towards. And it's so scientifically proven to not be a a driver towards mental health that is in line with your values.
Yeah.
So can we talk about for a second if a woman is struggling and knows they often struggle
Okay.
with comparison and it being the thief of joy, as we know, what are some things we can do to try to quell that a little bit?
Yeah. First, I would say understanding where that comparison comes from is step number 1. And I
Okay.
addressed this a little bit earlier because the comparison these are all stemming from the same place. The comparison and envy, the scarcity mindset, the competitiveness, the feeling of discomfort when suddenly a woman that you put into a certain box steps out of it.
Yes.
Right? Let's say you had a friend who was a stay-at-home mom and suddenly she leaves being a stay-at-home mom and she's making aggressive career moves, and you're like in a career and thinking, well, how is she doing that? I'm the one who's been over here working all this time. Like,
What's she
maybe that.
trying to do?
Right. Yeah. The who does she think she is
Who
thing.
she thinks she is.
Right. And we hear this from celebrities all the time. All the time we hear this from celebrities that they deal with it too. Honestly, I've dealt with this with Every Woman is Worthy as well. It's not my inner circle that's really cheering me the loudest. Maybe a few friends have been really supportive, but it's actually the strangers that have bought in. It's the strangers who care. It's the strangers who've showed up. And this is something that I hear quite a lot that entrepreneurs specifically go through is a scarcity of support and this bizarre dynamic that like the people around you actually don't buy in more until they see that it's more popular. All of these things, again, are driven from the systems that we are in where women have less access, where women truly do have less access. The global gender gap is like 68.8% closed, but it's still open. There's still a wage gap. There's still a gap, like I said, in political representation and equal rights under the law. Women are still at disproportionate, degrees of harm for conflict zones and higher levels of poverty, right? We see gender discrimination even though it's not supposed to happen, we see gender discrimination in hiring. We see issues around, what can women do logistically when they're pregnant and postpartum because of varying degrees of care and access. There's a lot to it. So when we're constantly in a system where we're trying to prove ourselves through hustle, prove ourselves through our beauty, prove ourselves through, conformity or people pleasing or whatever, what career success, whatever it is, there is a pressure to perform, right? There's a pressure on a lot of women to perform and conform and to find ways to stand out in a system that makes us feel less in some cases, and that gives us unequal access. Even if you don't feel yourself less in this system, let's say, usually that's because of being either extremely grounded in your worth or because of privilege or because of not seeing the full picture, one of those things or all of them, right? Even if you don't feel the impacts directly, it's still really important to recognize that there are disparities at large that are interplaying here, right? Like society is a system, right? It's a just like there's epigenetics. Epigenetics are our body changing in response to on a cellular level, in response to our environment, in response to the food we eat, the way we exercise, our stress levels, environmental toxins, so many things, right? That's epigenetics. Our body's responding on a cellular level. And so how do we think of the mind and our feelings of worth and how we relate to other women? How do we think that that's somehow different? It's not. Our minds and how we perceive our sense of safety and value and access it's constantly being impressed upon by the dynamics around us, some of which we are aware of and some of which we are not aware of, and it's happening on a subconscious level. So yeah, I don't know what I think. If we circle around to, okay, some of this is systemic with the competitiveness. If we circle around to how do we heal that, I think, like I said, number one is seeing where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And trying to be more honest about that. Sometimes that alone, I think, can be enough because it's like, well, oh my gosh, wow, this isn't about her. This isn't about what that girl or woman is doing. It's not about her needing to be limited. It's about me needing to release from this toxicity. And if I can release, then the order reestablishes and I have so much more peace. And I see that this was never about me versus her. It was about feeling like it has to be that way when in fact it does not. It does not. Right. So I think that's one dynamic. And then also finding ways, like I said earlier, finding ways that you can take action can actually build up your sense of confidence and worth. And,
Yeah.
you know, there are a lot of people in the world that sit in their feelings and don't take action. And I think it's so important that you find ways to take the aligned actions so that you're focused on you and you're feeling like you're taking those risks and being confident and courageous in the ways that are meaningful to you. And if you're doing that, then you're probably more focused on what that is doing for you and the incremental changes it's making in your life rather than focusing on the proverbial her.
The proverbial her. She's always there.
Yeah.
She's always doing something better than us that we wish we could be doing. We're not recognizing that her life is completely different or fictional.
Yeah.
And and then there's a weird shame cycle that goes along with that because we get these feelings of jealousy or like, well, that bitch, right?
Yeah.
And then we feel shameful about feeling that, oh my
Mhm.
God, what am I doing? That's
Yeah.
horrible. I'm not lifting other women up. What is the deal? This is not who I thought it was. And we go around in that
Yeah.
beautiful circle without ever coming up for air and realizing, I didn't create this.
Right.
I did not create this, but I am responsible for
Yeah.
how I'm going to take that information that I didn't
Yeah.
create this, but I'm responsible.
I like what you said. I like what you said about going around in a circle and that circle maybe being something that was set in motion before you were even born, but it is our responsibility to break out of the circle, to break it and
Yes.
so that it can't keep spinning around and around.
We don't want it to anyways. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
good. It's not a feel good system and it's not a system like set up and designed to make us feel good. It's a system designed to keep us worrying about her instead of changing the world. So, like
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's where, some of the content on the advocacy side, like we focus a lot on messages about bringing women together. Kind of a hard rule, even when I sometimes like want to call, want to like, put women on blast for something that I disagree with or whatever, or the brand doesn't align with. Like that's not what we do. We focus on reminding women of the connection of women together. So you'll see that layered in the advocacy as well, is like messages of healing and community for women and the power that we have together, because we really have to come back to that. It's so important. And I just see the same thing again and again and again from women all over the world saying, like, women are the ones who are going to bring in the healing and are going to help birth the next era. And it's happening. It is happening. And it's so beautiful to see. It's so much work. It's hard. It requires being aware and addressing those grief and rage feelings, right? But it's moving through those with the action that's so powerful and so transformative. Women right now are the most educated ever. We still don't have equal access to education compared to men on a global level, but we are the most educated ever for women in history. And women are outpacing men in higher education completion rates. And they're not squandering it. They're going after what they want to do, how they want to make an impact. And if we can do things like that, not just in education, but in other sectors, and take that type of momentum and ride with it in the next 10 years, things can absolutely change on a dramatic level. Because at the same time as that's happening, we're also getting a shift in wealth. So the next 25 years are considered the great wealth transfer. And that wealth, particularly from the silent generation and baby boomers, is going to be shifting to younger generations like millennials and Gen Z. And Gen X gets caught in the middle there where they're kind of a little bit on both ends. But most of the studies focus a little bit more on the millennials and Gen Z because they end up they're bigger generation cohorts on the whole, and they end up receiving larger shares of the wealth over time. But in that great wealth transfer, it's going predominantly to young women. So the majority of the world's private wealth is projected in like 25 years to be in the hands of women. So if you think about the education rate completion, right, you think about that combined with this great wealth transfer, along with hopefully slowly building up the political representation in the top levels, combined with that like groundswell of grassroots movement, and then the shift in spending being values aligned with younger generations, right? Wanting to have values aligned spending and values aligned giving back and investments to help these grassroots initiatives and things gain the momentum they deserve, but that they have struggled with due to systemic challenges and due to underfunding, right?
Right.
So when all of those things start to come together and the younger generations knowing their worth better and all of this, all of these many factors, combating racism, combating the fat phobia, helping young girls with body image, like empowering women through sports and leadership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, right? It can just create this tidal wave of momentum to absolutely transform things. And
With money behind it.
yes, with money behind it. That is what gives me hope, is seeing that we are so close. We are so close to what could be some dramatic changes in our lifetime. Will gender equality happen in our lifetime? No. But can we get to a really different place? Can we close that gap and change it so that those countries that are struggling, the majority of them, we can start turning it around the other way and then make fast progress in the countries that were already doing okay and set the model for the world? Yeah, I think we can. I really do. I really do. And I see it because women in so many different countries, they're doing it. You look at the women in India who formed their own gang and they're like enforcing enforcing, good behavior, against the people who have harmed girls in villages, right? Like they're going around with sticks to like beat men up who are harming girls, right? And they're enforcing the law and taking it into their own hands. Like you can look at Kurdish women who are female fighters, literally like holding the line in Syria against ISIS, trying to like, fight back. Like there are incredible women all over the world doing the most heroic things. And if there's any, and this is like an extremely tragic and sad example, but like when you want to look at the most courageous example of why women's rights are so important and what people are willing to sacrifice for them, then you have to look at what just happened at the end of 2025, beginning of 2026 in Iran. You've got to look at the Iranian women and see the courage that so many of these, especially like young Gen Z girls, had going into the streets to fight against an oppressive regime and losing their lives for it. They understand the price of women's rights and what it means to have it all taken away. And many, many people have said they would rather die. They would rather die than not have that. Older generations of women who have seen the full transformation since the revolution. Like I saw a woman who was, maybe in her 70s, and she was bleeding from the mouth in the street in the protests against the regime there. And she was saying, you can't scare me. You can't kill me. I've been dead for 40 years already. Like that was chilling to me. That was chilling because, women's rights are absolutely worth fighting for. And women everywhere right now are seeing that, I think, not just across one culture, but across many. And they are actually taking action. And I just think to myself every day, if the brave women in Iran can do that, why can't I make a social media post sharing my thoughts with my friends without, insecurity? Why can't I be courageous about my investment in this business and trust where it's heading? Like if they can do that, I absolutely can make the calls to my representatives about important legislation, taking 2 seconds out of my day. I can have the hard conversations in an age-appropriate way with my kids. I can confront misogyny when I see it around my dinner table with relatives. Like, I can do those things. I can. And so can anybody listening, I promise.
We can do those things, and they are so worth doing because what's at stake The 70-year-old Iranian woman knows what's at stake. And I
Yeah.
think at the base of us all, we know
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
is at stake here.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we have to do these things for our daughters. We have
Yeah,
to.
absolutely. I don't see it as optional. I see
No,
it as like if women really don't understand why it's important to advocate for women's dignity and safety and equality, if they really can't comprehend that, like that's a big issue they need to address within themselves. This should be, an all hands on deck type moment in history. And I promise that the women who care far outnumber the ones who don't. Because like I said, I get the stories and the conversations from women across all the continents every single day. Every Woman is Worthy has an incredibly diverse international audience. We have women everywhere from Brazil to South Africa to Iraq to Italy, to Australia, to the
yeah.
Philippines. Like we have women all over the place, and it's beautiful to see that awakening and knowledge is there. And for many women in many many diverse parts of the world, that knowledge and awareness has been there for many decades, not just recent.
It's such an important message that I really want you to be able to connect with our listeners. Can you tell them where they can find you, where they can get on board with what you're doing and support what is happening with Every
Yeah.
Woman is Worthy?
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have our shop at everywomanisworthy.com. So we sell apparel and gifts and all very focused on validating women's value, celebrating women, advocating for equality, and a portion of all of those proceeds goes to initiatives around the world that help women and girls who are facing marginalization, facing violence, poverty, discrimination, things like that. So, in the last two years, we've given back to 6 different initiatives. So we've helped women in crisis with limited access to maternal care in hospitals, like women who are having crisis births in Palestine. We've helped women like that, and with humanitarian aid for hunger and basic needs. We have helped women experiencing period poverty here in America, and an organization that helps BIPOC women and pregnant people to access doulas and doula care for pregnancy and postpartum, and to help them navigate with an advocate the terrain right now where in healthcare we know that Black women face disproportionate maternal mortality rates in America, which is tragic. And so they make sure that doulas are there, and they also advocate for reproductive safety and dignity and legislation that honors that. So we've supported them. We have supported organizations that help with humanitarian aid in places like the Congo and South Sudan. South Sudan has, and Sudan at large, has the largest displacement crisis in the entire world. And women are disproportionately facing food scarcity, famine, and extreme rates of rape and sexual violence. And then women in the Congo, different situation, but women there facing marginalization, unsafe labor practices in mining for the minerals that make our smartphones and our laptop
Hmm.
batteries and all of that, and facing disproportionate sexual violence. So we've helped with that. Trying to think of some others. We've done helped the National Domestic Violence Hotline here in America, um, which is such a life saving resource, and some others as well. So we've done a lot around the giving back, and we try to keep it fluid so that we can be responsive, so that
Mm,
at year's end, we have taken scope of where are there some really serious needs around the world that need the injection of funding. Of course, like it could be anywhere at any time.
yeah.
There's so many important initiatives out there, but it's kind of taking a lens of global women's equality and what are some main struggles and issues at the moment, and where are the responsible organizations doing that work. They need the funding. I want Every Woman is Worthy to be the vessel to help inject that funding and to help mainstream gender equality, mainstream feminism in ways that the world hasn't seen before, uniting around a message of dignity, and celebrating one another and seeing the world change as we do that. So people can find us on the shop. We've got a lot of changes coming in the next year with like the product assortment and things like that. But you can check out some of the stuff we have on right now. And then you can also follow us on social media. Instagram is our main hub, but we have the Instagram and then Facebook and Threads. So the whole metaverse is connected. And then we have a small presence on YouTube and Pinterest. So those need a little work, but the Instagram is kind of the main spot. Every time that somebody sees the message or sees the message connected to a piece of content, I feel like it's a potential to be an amplifier.
Yes.
And I love that because I'm like, we've just got to have this on repeat for the men too.
Yes.
just,
Yes.
just recognize women's value. Say it, 100 million times.
Ugh, it's so beautiful, Maggie. The work that you're doing is so incredible, and we
Thank you.
often talk to our listeners about curating their feed and making sure that they are receiving messages through their scrolling and social
Mhm.
media that are the messages that really are making a difference. And
Love that.
I can't recommend Every Woman is Worthy enough. It is a wonderful account, and it just
Thank
is
you.
it's my favorite lift in the day. When I go by you, I know I'm going to see something that is going to inspire me
Oh, thank you.
towards change or just,
Yeah.
towards celebration.
Yeah.
So thank you
Great.
so, so much. You are wildly important to this cause. And I can't say enough how much I admire your spirit and your drive and what you're doing. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I just want to, end with saying that it's absolutely possible to take one small step and just see where that step goes, because that's why Every Woman is Worthy exists. As I just said, I'm going to show up no matter who cheers for me. I'm going to show up before I know how to make it good. Like, I didn't know what I was doing with the social media at first. I had no idea. And I just trusted that I would get a little better every day and that I couldn't get too hung up on the metrics and to stay calm if I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see. And that's really all it takes is just being confident in yourself enough to trust the direction you're heading in, even if you don't see the results that you want. And in every piece of content that is harder to consume on our page, like talking about, you know, gender-based violence or something like that, what we do specifically is we make sure not to just leave it with trauma or sensationalization or anything like that. It's leaving viewers seeing that, hey, by the way, if this mattered to you, these are organizations you can go support.
Hmm.
This is a place where you could go donate. This is an action you could take, or on a conceptual, level, these are the types of things that we need to see change to make this circumstance better, and planting that seed. So there's always, even with the hard things that we can see, that we can tangibly make an impact on. Doesn't mean that everything is for everybody. We can't do it all ourselves, but
Right.
just pick the one thing that matters, and stay true to it and trust that your small part, because none of us can do a big part. We all do a small part, including me, right? As long as we do that, that's what moves the needle.
That's what moves the needle, and we can move the needle together. Thank
Yeah.
you, Maggie. This was such a great conversation. And connect with Maggie on social media. She's fantastic. And thank you again for being with us today. We love you and appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.